Jason Yang is a professional violinist and composer who has performed on stage and all over the world with Madonna, has collaborated with major brands like Adidas, Ford, Paul Mitchell, and Panasonic, and appeared on television shows like the hit series Glee, The Colbert Report, and The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. On his YouTube channel, you can experience his highly entertaining performances and how-to videos. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce Jason Yang. So Jason, you're a kid from Jersey, right?
Yep, that's right.
Tell me about your life growing up in Jersey, getting started with music.
I started piano when I was 5, violin when I was 6. It was sort of a combination of my own interest in it and also my parents sort of bestowing it upon me. Neither of them got to learn any instruments or any sort of music when they were growing up in Taiwan, and so they wanted their kids to do that in their place. And so my sister, who was a concert pianist, and then myself, who ended up focusing just on violin.
Hold me like your money. Tell me that you want me.
Went on tour with Madonna when I was 23.
Wow, first tour and it's with Madonna.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
And I can't tell you why.
We did 29 countries, 65 cities, and 88 total shows in the span of 10 months.
Wow.
Which is insane.
What is it like to get on stage in front of thousands of people?
I obviously couldn't see anybody. It was just flashing lights in the complete panorama. That's kind of kept my eyes right on my violin. It was like, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up. And it turned out okay. After the first few notes, then it's like, oh wait, everything that I practiced and like everything that I've done leading up to this accumulates right there in that moment, and then it's like, and then everything kind of disappears for the entirety of the performance until you're done, and it's like, oh, that was actually not as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
Everyone that I know is writing music right now because of the pandemic, you know, just trying to stay sane. Are you doing any of that?
Yeah. That's pretty much all I'm doing, especially since there's no live performing.
How did you come across the audio modeling instruments and what drew you into them?
Once I began composing, of course, sample libraries and all of these is kind of where you start. In my own opinion, how violin in virtual instrument world, in sample libraries, it's been very, very hard to find really, really good sounding ones where you can really capture all of those nuances and all those tiny details in a way that's anywhere similar to how I express on the violin. And that's where I heard about audio modeling, where that's pretty much exactly what they do. Of course, the flexibility is that if you are working on a project that may not have the budget to hire a solo clarinet player or a solo trombone player or something like that, you can always just work this into it and have great results.
So of the 3 audio modeling instrument types that you're playing with, which one do you think would you lean to the most as your favorite?
The ones I'm leaning more towards are sort of the clarinets, bassoons, and trumpet. The violin was the one I just did not even want to go towards. I honestly didn't even open it until a little bit more recently. I was just having a blast with all the other instruments that I'm not personally versed in, because I was just like, oh my god, these sound amazing, they sound great.
Did that ever change for you? Did you decide to dive into the violins and say, let's see what happens when I play with this?
I have, and now I honestly can't stop. I started just tinkering with like, ooh, can I make that sound pretty good? And then surprisingly, I kind of could.
How were you able to recreate the realism of the instrument that you're so well versed in?
How I started to get it more expressive was almost thinking inwardly of all the little nuances and things that I do in my violin playing to be expressive. The main parameters that I control are expression, vibrato, and a little bit of pitch bend.
You're using what exactly to control your instruments?
Of course, starting with the MIDI keyboard, I mean, I'm using a Nord Stage 2. As a piano player, I kind of live off that hammer action. I'm most comfortable actually using just the mod wheel, which I mostly use for expression actually, as opposed to what it's default set to, which is vibrato. Sometimes I'll use a breath controller if I need it, but in general, my setup is pretty much just this. Just one hand on the keys, other hand on the mod wheel and the pitch bend, and then my foot on the expression pedal. And in every single SWAM instrument, it is very, very easy to remap and customize every single MIDI parameter. Even just taking a look at vibrato alone, I can also control a really small vibrato, but really fast, which is a completely different type of sound and mood. Or I can have a really wide and really slow vibrato, which sometimes could be a great tool to use in very like romantic, expressive music. Anywhere from no vibrato to full vibrato. First, we have a bunch of different clarinet options. One of my favorite ones is clarinet to bright. And over here in the middle is where you see factors that I implement in order to give it the little nuances and everything to make it more expressive. Transitioning notes is crazy in SWAM. So if we take just the opening clarinet solo for Rhapsody in Blue, that last slide, that glissando there is extremely important, right? It's not the same if it just ends up like, it's, so, and that is just in the velocity. Before we even touch anything with, pitch bend, expression, and vibrato, all that, that's just from the velocity on the keyboard. The softer I play the subsequent note, the more drawn out the glissando is, versus if I play the next note much harder, it skips that glissando and just goes directly to the note. And in between, you can see it's not just slow or fast glissando, it's a whole bunch of values in between depending on all those MIDI values of the velocity. In a way, it's sort of technical, in a way, it's sort of just really clicked intuitively of just, oh, that's what I've been doing this entire time on my own instrument. With the SWAM violin, you actually hear where the placement of the bow is going closer to the bridge or farther from the bridge. And that's kind of, that was just crazy. So if I can control these things with ease, it's like I can just take everything, all of my experience into it and just kind of put it into the computer like that. When I'm playing each note, it's creating it live as opposed to just drawing on a sample and like manipulating it that way. And I mean, that's just, I don't understand, but I love it.
It's okay. Neither of us do. It's all about how it sounds and how we feel playing it, right?
Yes.
This whole idea of practicing for kids when they're getting into an instrument is very daunting, and they hate it, and they can't stand it when mom and dad keep hounding them about practicing. So from somebody who's actually done work and gotten paid for it, can you give us and our kids some advice on how they can get motivated and stick with the practicing?
One of the biggest pillars of my own musical development was learning to improvise and really learning to play things by ear and not just being on the page. Sure, you can become a fantastic technical player, but if you can't make me feel something with how you're playing it, then what's the point? I found that transitionary period where it went from like doing what I'm told into being just like falling completely in love with my instrument. Because it's not always about just, about the job or about the gig or the current project or what you're working on, there needs to be that self-gratification of your own personal expression. I actually genuinely have fun playing with this virtual instrument.
I am very thankful that you exist, and
Thanks, Mike. Likewise.
Thanks. And I'm grateful that we've had the opportunity to chat and that our viewers have been able to get to know you a little better and get to know how you use audio modeling instruments, and really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Jason.
Appreciate it.